So we know what's happened in the Democratic primary when it comes to millennial voters. We know who they go for. Overwhelmingly, they're fans of Bernie Sanders. But theoretically, when we go to the general election, what is going to happen to those voters who haven't been all that enthusiastic about Hillary Clinton? If she's the nominee, what's going to happen? We're going to try to figure that out today with a little bit of data. So if we can bring up this first chart, it's going to show you from spring of 2015 on to the fall of 2015 and spring of 2016 what has happened with millennial voters. And you'll see that over that time period, millennial voters have become significantly more interested in the Democratic Party, going from 55% preference to 61%, while at the same time dropping 7 points in their interest in Republicans. So you already had a 15-point difference a year ago. Then you end up with an almost 30-point difference by spring of 2016. Now, we can speculate about why that is. It's Bernie Sanders. It's Bernie Sanders and it's Donald Trump. So Bernie Sanders brings in the young voters, and I believe that Donald Trump turns off the young voters. And so, look, going into the election, I think that's pretty good news. That should make us pretty optimistic, I think, in terms of at least the young voters.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't surprise me that they're becoming more and more Democratic, especially when you consider the fact that the right wing continues to move further to the right. And a lot of the issues that appeal to young voters are being neglected by Republicans. And so this whole notion of traditional values, again, is not appealing to younger voters. They care about equality. They care about protecting the disenfranchised, particularly the LGBT community. So those numbers don't surprise me, especially when you consider how far right the Republican Party has gone.
Yeah, exactly. Now, what if it is Hillary Clinton? So she has not been doing very well versus Bernie Sanders. If it's theoretically her and if it's theoretically Donald Trump, will we see a similar sort of thing? The outsider, will he get a lot of the vote? Let's take a look. Based off the most recent polls, she gets 61% of millennials. And so it doesn't look like among likely millennial voters, she dominates over Donald Trump. And this, again, adds a little bit of evidence to my belief that he is turning off these voters. And so, look, he's the exciting guy. He's from a reality show. So you might think, well, millennials will be all about that. But they're not all about Donald Trump. Now, this is a poll from a long time before the general election actually happens. What bothers me is that they will end up voting for her because his policies would be so bad for millennials, not because her policies would be so good for millennials. And this is an opportunity where if we had a politician who stood for the future of the Democratic Party, he could turn them into lifelong Democrats. Instead, she'll get the vote, assuming they vote, and we don't know how likely they are to vote. That isn't included in that. But they're voting for her because she's better than the crazy guy.
Yeah. Well, I feel like that's indicative of a lot of elections that we have, whether it's general elections or midterm elections. I think people feel like they have no real options, that they have to choose the lesser of two evils. And very recently, we had a discussion about how the system is set up in such a way that the front runners end up being the individuals that poll very poorly when it comes to favorability. And when the system's set up that way, it's very unfortunate, you know, and I think that in this case with millennial voters, Hillary is going to benefit from that system because the other option is so horrendous.
Yeah. And so I have pretty low hopes about her being willing to shift her platform to bring them in, especially if she sees polling like that. She's going to think that she's already done the job she needs to do. But I would hope, and this is just a bare minimum, that they would stop with the purposefully antagonizing young voters. So early on, we saw one of her surrogates saying, well, the young Bernie fans, they pretty much just do it so that they can meet men at the rallies. Again, insulting them, saying that they don't choose based on policy. We had Bill Clinton recently was admonishing millennial voters from his point of view, not knowing enough about politics and all that. And this is exactly the wrong sort of messaging. You should be thinking not just about the election this year, you should be thinking about building the party off into the future. And as important and as awesome as older voters are, they will be in far fewer elections to vote for you than the younger voters. Perhaps giving them just a little bit of what they both crave and would be good for the country for them to have might not be a bad investment to make in the future of your own party.